welcome to this special Table Talk. We brought Table Talk on the road, and we are coming to you from the beautiful Heroes Defense offices. This conference room is gorgeous, and this spot is doing a lot of good, and we'll talk more about how these offices are being used as a support system for our first responders. But thank you to our friends at Gandolfo's for providing our lunch. We broke a little bread, we've been engaging some conversation, and now we're ready to get right down to focusing on those issues that affect our community. And we're going to zero in on what we can do to create more unity and to lift the level of patriotism in this country. I'm also really excited to welcome Classic Interiors as our brand. Work with you to identify what it is you want, and then they'll work with Stone River and take all of your wants and desires into consideration, and they will create that perfect dream piece for you. So a great big thank you to Classic Interiors. Welcome to the Table Talk family. We're glad to have you guys. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. There's so much for us to get to. So what I want to do right now is give a great big thank you to Travis Snoder of Heroes Defense for inviting us to be here. It's absolutely beautiful here, Travis.
Thank you. Beautiful office, beautiful place, beautiful space.
Yes. So let's just start right here with you, Travis. Introduce yourself, and then we'll just work our way right around and just say any little thoughts that you would like to throw out, and then we'll get right down to the business of starting this conversation.
Great. Travis Snoder, co-founder of Heroes Defense. We got 9/11 coming up. We got a lot of activities happening for the community here, and so we just want to talk about that and educate the community a little bit about what's going on and what's happening in the community.
All right, thanks for having me. Chief Dwayne Nelson, Idaho Falls Fire Department. We're one of the largest all-hazard fire and EMS agencies in Idaho, and glad to be here today.
Thank you. We're glad to have you.
I'm Lieutenant Zeb Graham from the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office. I supervise the investigation division of the Sheriff's Office, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Thanks for being here.
Sergeant Judd Ashbacher with the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office as well, and I oversee our backcountry unit out of the Swan Valley area.
Well, I am so happy to have all of you here. This is a really incredible panel of thought leaders, and so I know we're going to have some really productive conversation. As we look at everything that is happening right now in this country, there's no question that we need to focus some attention on unity and patriotism. So we're definitely going to do that. And I want to start right off, Travis, by having you give people a sense of the exciting things that are happening this weekend with the banquet and all the big things.
Sure. So one of Heroes Defense originally founded, we really started as just a, starting to remember 9/11. Because 9/11 for us, but especially I think for our communities around the world and people, that lived it, is a pinnacle event that is a representation of first responders' character, but also our character as a whole country, and that that remembers that day is very valuable when we remember it that way. And so we started with the banquet, which is again this year is our 10th annual. It's on 9/7 at the Blue Cross Center. I will remind you guys, we've been telling everybody, tickets are running out fast. So last year we turned away 40 or 50 people. We don't want to do that. So get your tickets. It's an amazing event. Last year we raised about $328,000, and this year I hope we're going to raise about $500,000. So we've got, and what's really interesting, last year it was such a great eye opener to our community. The following we have. We actually have people coming from out of state. We have people coming from surrounding states as well as clear from Arizona coming up for it. People that grew up here that love seeing what our community is doing and the culture we have here. So great event if you haven't been to it. So it's a great event. We're bringing guys from New York City Fire Department that lived 9/11. From before all the way to the next years and currently still living 9/11.
Right.
So they're going to speak to us a little bit about what 9/11 was and what it still is, and the importance of a community with our culture. And then one of the really neat things we did this year, one of our missions is the more we can engage and educate the community around first responders and military and what they do for us and their character, the better off we are as a communities and a country, right? So one of our partners, we got connected with Tunnel to Towers, which is a huge organization. I think most people are somewhat familiar with them. They actually put together a 9/11 museum, and we paid for them to come out here. Heroes Defense has funded them to come out here to bring that event to Idaho Falls, which is unique by itself, but it's really unique to have it on 9/11.
To be able to have it right here, that is
It's-
pretty remarkable.
It's a weird circumstance of ways through connections that we ended up with it, but we're very fortunate to have it here at all, let alone, as you can imagine, there's a high demand for it, and there's only one. And what's unique about that is, if you've been in New York City, it's a very sacred place, it's a very cool place, it's a very solemn place, but when you go through the museum in New York City, it's like any museum. There's a lot to see and a lot to educate and learn about, but the neat thing about this exhibit is that you're going to go through it in small groups with people that lived it. So it's actually orchestrated by responders that are fire and police that were on 9/11, who responded to 9/11. Most of them lost members of their team, or if not their entire team. And so to hear firsthand stories for them about what 9/11 was and the stories that happened that day that are really representation of the character that we're wanting the community to understand. You don't get that in New York, you don't get that anywhere else. It's really unique to have here. So and that shows up Friday afternoon. I think with all of you's help, we're gonna do a tour through town. So you'll see it driving through town. And then it's gonna be set up at the waterfront, and it will be open Saturday. Now, first of all, it is completely free. It is paid for. One of the requirements of Tunnel to Towers is that we don't charge for it, nor do we want to. So it is completely free to the public. The only thing I'll warn you about is long lines, but we have the fair, so you're used to that, right?
Right.
So, it's open on Saturday. They're adjusting the hours because the people are talking at the event, at the dinner. So it's open 10 a.m. to, I think, 4 or 4:30 on Saturday. And then Sunday it's open 10 to 7. And then one of the really cool things we want to do with this is we want to get all the, important thing for us is the next generation. So all the 8th graders are going through it on school field trips on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in Idaho Falls. And then it's open in the evenings from 4 o'clock till 7 p.m. for the public as a whole. So Saturday and Sunday for the public as a whole, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday day for the students, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evenings, 4 to 7 for the public. So
That's gonna go a long way in educating that younger generation.
Exactly. We've worked a lot with them trying to find that exact age, and 8th graders are right at that point where they start to learn, understand, and comprehend. And so we want to hit them when they're young and make sure that they understand, and it stays with them through the growth.
Right, so they carry it right here,
Carry it
and
with
they're
them.
gonna pass that
You plant
on.
that seed and make sure, like raising kids, you all get kids, you plant that seed and
Yeah.
watch it grow, right?
That's so true.
And one of our pinnacle things, and we were just talking about it beforehand, and I'll give Chief Nelson and his team, they've been far more, useful in getting it actually done since we started. I haven't even been on the construction site yet, but one of the initiatives we wanted to do is not only the 9/11 event, but to keep that character in the community as a reminder throughout the whole year. So we worked to get, with Chief Nelson, they had a design already, they already taken the initiative. They were graceful enough to let us step in and help get it completed. And Heroes Defense funded the construction of the first of 2 9/11 memorials. It'll be unveiled on September 11th in front of Station 1. Really excited about that. They did a beautiful job designing it. It's going to be a really gorgeous thing, and watch our community come together and help us get that done has been amazing. I can't go without mentioning Nate. Nate was one that built the Taylor Crossing memorial. Taylor Crossing fountain.
That's gorgeous.
So he's doing the same work. So as you are all aware, he does beautiful work. I expect this is going to be the same style or the same quality. And then we have one more that we'll be building later this year on the Ammon side, in front of the Ammon Fire Department, right on Ammon Road. So little unique differences between the two, but both of them, they had already gotten a piece of steel from New York City. And Heroes Defense was able to help us get another one from New York City, and I learned yesterday, actually, it's from Tower 2. And Kevin Hellman will do a little bit, explain more about that piece of steel, but they specifically went back and on one of the scraps that was left, cut it out just for us out of Heroes Defense, and shipped it to us, and that'll be on a memorial we build later this year.
That's really very remarkable, and to have that memorial be unveiled on 9/11 is again something pretty special. So Chief Nelson, I would love to ask you, as you were kind of watching 9/11 unfold, you probably had a little bit different perspective as a first responder. What went through your mind on that day?
Yeah, it was a really strange day for me. Actually, my daughter was just born. She was 7 days old. I was actually at home still with her, sitting on the couch when the first plane impacted the tower. And so that personal of just, holding your child basically there, but at the same time, my little sister was going to NYU. And so she was actually in New York City. She had just started her first year at NYU. And so immediately, with that, you couldn't get through. I mean, it was an immediate, almost impossibility to get a hold of her. It was days actually before we actually spoke to her. And so we knew that the school had done a really good job, but we knew that she was okay, but we couldn't talk to her for several days actually after that event. So there was lots of things going on in my head. As a first responder, I'd been on the job for about 4 or 5 years at that point. But I was 14 years in the National Guard at that time, and I immediately knew that the world just changed. For me individually as a first responder, as a firefighter, but also as a military person, and just knew that the world had changed, our whole environment, everything had changed in this country for my 7-year-old daughter. And so really it was just a super impactful day that day, and still kind of gives me chills thinking about that day and that morning basically. It just really is one of those things that for us, it never leaves us. And so that saw that day. But like Travis was alluding to, our kids now are reading about it in books. Many of the firefighters that I hired today weren't born during that, or were just small infants or children themselves that didn't understand that day. And so, being able to partner with Heroes Defense, Nate Durchie with Rock Solid, Hardscapes, and Paul Davis and Qualtech, really to memorialize not only that event, but here locally, and to have it on 9/11 with a bunch of NYU folks, first responders coming to be able to, celebrate that memorial and dedicate that memorial on 9/11 at 10 o'clock in the morning at Station 1. It really is one of those things that really will be impactful.
Yes.
And we can talk about the memorial a little bit more. I'll give these guys a little bit of chance to talk about what it meant their day, but I do want to hit on that memorial some more as we proceed today.
Yeah, and Chief, I think that memorial is going to go a long way in helping us keep that commitment to never forget, and helping educate that younger generation.
100%, and really the memorial is truly a 9/11. It truly is going to be a fabulous place, and really what we hope to bring out of that here in the community is not just a remembrance of 9/11, but really create a community space where people can come basically and recognize the service that everybody's doing, that the first responders are doing locally and our military personnel are doing locally. That really becomes a place of remembrance of 9/11 and being able to drive that forward, but also become a place that people can go when they're struggling, or when they have lost someone, or when they basically want to really just come back to the service-oriented feel of where we should be as a community and where we should be as a country.
That's going to be a game changer. Lieutenant Graham, same question out to you as you watched everything sort of unfold from your perspective as a first responder. What was it that was really of impact to you?
Well, in 2001, I was a senior in high school, so that's where I was when 9/11 happened, and So I wasn't a first responder at that point, but like everybody else that day, we spent it in school watching everything unfold. And there's just certain, you always remember where you were, you talk to people, what we were doing, and some of the things that I saw, and being that old, being really a young adult, you can see some exemplary leadership, some people coming together to take care of things, fire, police, that kind of thing. And that was moving to me back then, and that probably had something to do with my career choice later on.
That was my next question. Did that impact your decision?
It certainly did. It certainly did. And to see what got accomplished, to see really how you can work through some of the worst things, right? As a team, and get to a better resolution, or as best they could. That was very impactful for me. And then just I remember President George Bush at that time, like just the way that he handled that. I felt like even back then, seeing him get in front of the nation, get in front of people, and do what a leader should do, very impactful, even back then. So that's where I was, and now I'm in that 40 plus crowd, and so I've got younger kids that not too long ago this summer, in fact, where I've got an 11-year-old. He's learning about it on YouTube. And he's like, what was this? And so to sit down and have those discussions and be like, well, this is what happened, and well, what were you doing, and why did this happen? I didn't ever think I'd find myself in that spot, but got to experience that this year. So it's but it's a piece of our history, and it's it's something that you can't not talk about and not give the appropriate amount of attention. And it is a big deal. I think that the other thing about 9/11 for me was it was one of those times in my memory of things where I think as a nation you really saw us come together for a little while, even back then. And so
You're so right. I mean, we stopped focusing on our differences on September 12th, and we quickly recognized that we were on the same team, that we were all part of that American team, and we certainly did feel for a while that rise in patriotism, and I think we've got to find a way to get back to that. Sergeant Ashbacher, same question to you. What stands out in your mind as you reflect on that fateful day?
Yeah, so something I'll definitely never forget. I was actually in Goiânia, Brazil at the time when it happened. I was on serving an LDS mission, and more than halfway through my mission when it happened, a lady that we, kind of the same street we walked down every day to start going out and doing our thing, she came out running saying, elder, New York City's just been destroyed. And, back then we didn't have a phone or anything to just look it up and see what was going on. And so I didn't even know what to think at the time, but what I remember was like, man, are we like at war? What's going on? And we were able to contact a member who I knew had cable. And so we went over to that house, and thankfully enough, they had Fox News in English. It was great. But at the same time, it wasn't, because I sat down, and I had a Brazilian companion at the time, no other Americans in our group at the time. And, the impact on me, it was just like I was glued to that TV, seeing what was happening in a country that I was no longer in, a country that I loved. And at that time, I already knew that I was going to be going to the Law Enforcement Academy at ISU. So I already had my goals set to be a police officer at the time. And the impact on me, it was definitely different, because I had these other folks that they didn't, they knew something bad was going on, but it was different for them. And so, it was that day and that day only. And then after that, I had no other news. We didn't go to the member's house every day to watch TV or anything. Right. And so communication at that time with family was months at a time by letters. And my mom had sent me a
newspaper, Post Register, with the front cover and everything of the towers being hit. And I still have that newspaper at the time, but and again, I had to relive those emotions away from the country, and it was brutal. Like, I just wanted to go home, and I thought for sure that we were going to be sent home to join the military and let's go, and that didn't happen. So as time went on, I got home, and you know how things kind of go, like time, I wasn't reliving this all the time. And so it just kind of fades. And then when that first anniversary came up, I was home, just joined the academy. I was in the academy at the time, and man, it was so impactful to relive that here in the U.S. And it started a fire, you know. You wanted to be the one to go help and do what you can. And so it's kind of a wild experience, but never forget it, for sure.
Absolutely. And we saw a lot of heroes emerge during that time. And the stories are so important because they give us a real glimpse into exactly how impactful this was on our nation's history. And I think that's why what you guys are doing at Heroes Defense, Travis, is so important, because we have to keep those stories alive. We don't want them to get lost. That commitment to never forget is something where, as you've all kind of mentioned, there's a whole younger generation who just really doesn't have that memory of seeing the constant coverage or hearing the heartbreaking stories of families that were torn apart, or people who selflessly ran into those buildings to try to save as many people as they can. Let's talk a little bit about what our community can do to create more unity. You guys are out there, you're seeing things, you're seeing some shifts and changes in the dynamics here in our community. Throughout the country, certainly, there's a lot of impulsive violence. I mean, we have that story of a 14-year-old pulling a trigger at a high school in Georgia, ending 4 lives, 2 students, 2 adults, and injuring 9 others. What can you guys share with us about the temperature of things here in our community and some of the changes that are happening? And feel free, any of you, to just jump right in.
That was a floor assignment, so whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, I think it's really important for getting the message out that we're not just all bad guys, that we're here to do good, or, you know, not just stay in a fire station and sleep on a recliner.
I was waiting for something.
Yeah,
I had it's only a matter of time.
No, what's important, I think, is that, you know, there's a lot of hoopla about bad media and what they cover and everything, which definitely quite a bit of it's true in my opinion, but I think the coverage of stories that show the true heroism of those that are actually out serving and doing good, that those incidents get covered, you know, whether it be rescuing the cat out of the tree, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that one, but, getting those stories out that actually shows what these guys are going out and doing every day, instead of, oh, we have another shooting and it's a iffy one, or, you know, whatever it is. Show the positive light more than always showing the negative, because it seems like the negative things that happen, and whether they're actually negative or not, it's portrayed as negative, that gets replayed over and over and over.
You're right, that
Where-
sensationalism.
Where that one, yeah, exactly, and then where that one incident where the officer or fireman saved somebody's life, it gets played one time, and then you don't hear about it again because now they're covering the other one. So, just kind of my thought on that.
And that's a good point. We do have to keep those stories out there. And one thing that I am always impressed with is the community policing efforts. I think that goes a long way. It kind of comes down to having that relationship, being known before you're needed. One of the things that came out of yesterday's tragedy is the fact that that 14-year-old surrendered after engaging with a sheriff's deputy who was assigned to that school. And so because there was already that relationship, it was someone he knew, obviously there was more trust than if it's somebody who's just trying to talk him down and he doesn't know them from anywhere. And that really hit me yesterday, that what you all do is based a lot in the relationships that you're able to create.
Yeah, and as especially as a sheriff's office, we make, I think, every effort we can to have good relationships with our partners, which is everybody in this community.
Mm-hmm.
That's even fire folks, and our health systems, and other law enforcement agencies, and the citizens that we're ultimately working for. But relationships are huge, and I think by and large our community does a really good job of supporting us as first responders. I think if you ask 10 people, what they think of local law enforcement, local fire, EMS kind of stuff, I think you'll get a pretty good recommendation or a good review of our services and their interactions with us for the most part. I think that it's easy to get lost in the work that we do, but at the end of the day, we're people too, right? And we're swinging away doing the best that we can. And I think as far as what can we do as a community to be better partners? What can we do to help that relationship? I think just for realizing that we don't always have all the answers either, right? Something bad happens, it's our job to respond to it. It's our job to protect life, that kind of thing, and it's our job to investigate. And we don't always have that information right up front. I am a firm believer in transparency and what we do and that kind of thing. And when we have the information, we will certainly give it. And so sometimes just a little bit of patience is the best way to deal with that. But I know that's not easy because we want to know and everybody else wants to know too. But the last thing we want is to provide inaccurate information, things like that, that then gets taken in another direction and that kind of thing. So, but by and large, ever since I've started working in law enforcement around here and just interacting with the community, I've always felt pretty supported.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
Chief, how about you?
I think we're extremely supportive here in the community. I think the biggest challenge right now is the shift of just recruitment and people coming into the service, into either fire or policing. Our doors are always open. The fire station, the sheriff's office, police department, those doors are always open to the community. And I think what we need help with is that new generation that, wants to, be a part of it, not sure how to do it, but really that relationship comes, really from, our family dynamics, our faith dynamics, that social atmosphere of continuing to drive into, our population and our kids, really, that being a service-oriented person, being able to, make those difficult calls of becoming a first responder, becoming a police officer, becoming, joining the military, doing those types of things is going to be key for us to continue to make that shift and to make that next generation really of first responders, whether that be a police or firefighter or a military member. So it really comes down to probably that family dynamic and the relationship that we're continuously trying to make out in the public, so that drives that next generation, because we are seeing across the country really a shortfall in people that want to go into these services. Mm-hmm. And so we all have to do our part. The community as a whole needs to do our part, and it starts with that family dynamic.
That's so true. We're constantly hearing those stories about different police departments throughout the country really struggling, and efforts to defund the police, and those things do not go hand in hand with encouraging people to do this. But I think the stories, and I think we have to find a way to compete with some of those YouTubers and influencers, and we have to bring some of that honor back to the equation. Don't you think there's a little bit of a different attitude about those service-oriented professions right now than there was maybe back in the day?
Well, and I think there is a very different, outlook on that, just on, our young generation, of where they wanna go or what they think they can do. And so I think things like 9/11, we need to really, bring and hold on to those moments in time, and partly, with the memorial and different events that, we're holding here to really bring in and teach our 8th graders. I mean, that's an amazing thing to be able to get every 8th grader in Idaho Falls through that, to really teach them about what that is. We're gonna see probably, if we were able to follow every one of those kids, it's gonna make a difference in one of those, it's gonna make a difference in probably several of those kids' life
Oh,
on
yes.
what they choose to do. And so it really is important to grab a hold of those events that we can really tie the community together. And things like the memorial actually continuously remind of that, of those sacrifices and of those changes and of those things that you can do and you can be. Not just a somber place to remember 9/11, but really something to really drive yourself forward to remember as you drive past it or stop by and look at it and think about what you want to become.
Right.
And what you want to do.
When we use this, one of the most important words in the English language to me is perspective,
Yeah.
because it changes everything, right? When you have the right perspective, you understand things. With the wrong perspective, you go the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have an 8-year-old boy, right? And it's funny because they come over and they're playing guns or doing whatever, And I didn't teach him this. I think this is human nature. The boys get together and who wants to be the bad guy? Nobody wants to be the bad guy. Everyone wants to be the good guy, right? It's in our nature. But somewhere along the line, we've lost the perspective of what being the good guy actually is.
I think that's so true.
So, you look at these kids, and there was a time when I was growing up where if you want to be the good guy, you were going to be a police officer, or you're going to be a firefighter, right? And so that came with that, it came with that honor of being the good guy. That was what you as a whole, like intrinsically you wanted to be. But as we grow up, we get diverted, and we get sidetracked by whatever, right? So I use the word coolness factor, but it was cool to be a cop. It was cool to be a firefighter. It was cool to be the hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's so significant for me, which I didn't make that choice, I'm not as brave as these guys are. So, but what's amazing about that day is that every person that watched that, and you said it too, is every person that watched that perspective reemerged,
Yes.
right? Everybody across the country went, I want to be there, I want to help. How many people joined the forces because of it that day?
Mm-hmm.
It was the largest recruitment period in the history of the country, voluntarily, by the way, right? There was no draft, there was no recruiters had the easiest job of their life for that 5 years, right? So what I love about 9/11 is that, and you said it perfectly, right, is if you can get kids to understand the perspective that day, heroes came out of the dark, because you guys work, I use darkness, but you guys live in a dark place a lot of the time. You guys are seeing the worst side of humanity on a daily basis. I mean, you guys are trying to prevent it, and you guys are always fighting against it. And so you guys live in this place where the coolness of that gets masked by the news articles and all these other things in the political perspective building, I call it. But if you get the kids back to the place where they go, wow, being a first responder they are heroes. Like the fact that that day, now, there's a lot of stories that I've learned through these bits and pieces, but that one that sticks with me the most when I first heard with FDNY, one of the first questions I finally had the gumption to ask somebody. It's a sensitive subject, right? So I finally asked one of my friends there, I said, so I have a question for you. This has always made me wonder. When they went up the tower that day, did they know? Right? Because you never know. When you go into a response, you never know what's going to happen. You prepare for the worst, but you always assume the best outcome, right? Or you train to navigate the best outcome. But there's scenarios, something like that, where you walk into that and go, I have no control over this. It's way bigger than anything you control. Did they know? And the answer to me goes, of course they did.
And that's courage right there. That's exactly.
That is the character that defines a hero, right? So to hear that morning that, and I'm not talking like that with one person, I'm talking every unit that morning turned, and Kevin will share some of this next week. In fact, he did a podcast yesterday and shared some of this. There was actually one particular story where the leadership turned around, saluted the team, and said, "It's been an honor working with you guys." So I mean, they knew before they went up that the chance of them coming down was 5% or less, right? But to carry that through, that's the heroes. And I'm not saying, you know, that every one of those people are gonna have to sacrifice their life, but that's when you get an 8-year-old kid or a 10-year-old kid who goes, "I want to be a hero. I want to be in a position where I can save life," right? And they did. They went up that tower, and before the towers fell, this is often not. I've learned this through New York City and talking with people, but there were thousands of people that were trapped, that the firefighters and the police were able to get off of that, out of those buildings before they fell. So we talk about the people that died and the number of people, but there were thousands of people that would never made it out there without. In fact, there's a couple of survivors that tell you, "I saw this firefighter, he kicked down the door, pulled me out, helped me down the stairs, and then handed me off and went right back up," right? And so those stories are the ones when our kids hear them, are like, "I'm gonna be a firefighter, I'm gonna be a policeman," right? And somewhere in and I think in our community we have that culture, but I think we keep that by making sure that, as parents, and as members of the community, and as, you know, leaders in our community, we make sure that we have the memorials, we make sure that we have the reminders, make sure we have the stories, so that as our kids grow up, we don't get diverted by political, we don't get diverted by whatever else, right? And then we keep those kids engaged. So anyway, I just use that word perspective because it's so important that we keep that perspective of what 9/11 was, and there's only political whatever else, but the fact of the matter is that day, first responders showed up.
Yeah.
They did what they had to do, they made the choice they didn't make, and that's because of the character who they are.
Yeah.
So,
And it's stories like that that are so thought-provoking, and they hit us right here. And I mean, just that simple detail of knowing that they knew. They knew. I mean, when we stop and think about that, imagine.
Yes.
That's
pretty powerful, right?
Yeah.
Like standing in the building
Yes.
going, "I'm going up there."
probably not coming down.
And it's being prepared, right? I mean, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's being prepared, being trained, being, you know, ready to answer that call.
When it comes.
Yeah, so, you know, it's one of those things that, sheriff's office, fire department, police department are fighting up against here locally all the time. We have to send all of our law enforcement people to Boise for training, and we have to send firefighters all over the Northwest really to get training, and we just don't have that facility locally. And so we're being asked to do a lot of different things and being prepared for the worst. And it's often difficult for our staffs to do that. And so, you know, we're looking forward to the day when we can, you know, develop and build a training facility here locally for our first responders. And so, you know, being prepared to do that and being able to train our community and train our people basically here locally. Keep our kids local, keep those people basically in our community, and get them to a point where they actually are prepared to meet those challenges.
And training is so important. And speaking of that, Travis, Heroes Defense, that's one of the visions, one of the goals that you guys have set. And that's where some of this money that's raised is going to go. So talk a little bit about that, because I know you've got like 3 specific goals that are going to directly impact our first responders here.
Yeah. So, you know, I always define it this way, and this is kind of my own personal way of looking at it, but I think it blends well with what we do as Heroes Defense. For me, there's 3 main requirements for a first responder to be effective, right? The first is you gotta have the right tools, right? So whether you're Superman or whatever else, you've got superpowers, you gotta have tools, right? And Jaws of Life, it's a bulletproof vest, whatever it is, you gotta have the tools so you be prepared. 2, you gotta have the training, right? So I don't care who you are, watch any Superman movie, you still went through training process, right? So he still shot his laser to laundry. That's right. And the last thing is character, right? Well, you guys bring the character, it's the people's requirement to bring the tools and the training, right? So that's the way we see it. Now, our government provides some of those, but our government's limited, right? I think we all understand that. After the older we get, the more we understand that. And there's gaps, and so when we sit down with the leadership in the police department and fire departments, that's one of our questions. What do you need? Right? And we know that they're generally in these two categories, but how do you solve those problems, right? So the one that we can't bring is character, and thank goodness for us, they brought that.
Yes.
Right? So the more we give them the tools, the more we give them the resources they need, the better they can utilize their character to do what they need to do. So that's the way we kind of foresee it. So as we talk with the leadership here, there is a couple of main things, and I'll speak to the first one, the training piece. You know, we didn't have many buildings over, what, 2-story, 3-story in town. There's going to be in the next 10 years, I wouldn't call them skyscrapers, but we're going to have multi-story buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And that alone comes with a whole level of technical rescue for you guys, a whole level of complications for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one example, right, of our community that's changing. So, not to mention, you know, segmentation, diversification inside the communities themselves, different people moving in, different political beliefs. You bring in a lot of changes to the community which come with different trainings, different requirements, how do you handle those different situations, right? So, scaling a community without a training facility is impossible. You guys don't have the extra people, the extra hours, the extra resources to send people out and keep up with the training requirements. So, Chief Nelson has been working on this vision for a while. Heroes Defense is putting this one of our top requirements to build a training center here in town. And I haven't told you this yet, but we've made progress.
Excited to hear it.
Yeah.
Because it's not just gonna be a fire training center,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a public safety training center. It's gonna have facilities that both fire and police and law enforcement, first responders, all can use.
Yeah.
And so it's gonna be fantastic if we can get it there with help Heroes Defense in this community, which I think will continue to support as always. I think we can get it done.
What's really cool about this community, just, you know, you touched on it perfectly, but Heroes Defense, we say this a lot, like, we just get the fortunate, you know, advantage of being the guy with the conduit on the face, but every dollar that comes out of Heroes Defense comes from members of our community. So, there's not some big billionaire that's putting money in every month. We have a lot of people in the community that put in $5, $10, $50,000, $10,000, whatever it is they can afford to do. And so our community really is, even though Heroes Defense is the one orchestrating it, it's a representation of our community. And so we've already met with a couple people in town. I haven't told you this yet. So we actually met with a couple people in town that have the resources we need, and actually some people back east that build these facilities. We train Qualtech, we train a lot of these facilities, so we're familiar with what the requirements are, but to actually construct them is kind of its own art form in itself. And all of them have already pledged donations to equipment and tooling to get that done. So we're well on our way, but it's a big chunk of money and it's a lot of time and coordination. So a lot of what Heroes Defense is not just getting the stuff put together, but also all the time to make it all happen. So that comes with volunteers and you know, our team here. So excited for that, and that's one. The sooner we get that done, recruiting becomes a little easier, and training becomes a little easier. Not to mention a place to interface with the community where they can actually see
100%.
what you have to do, right? And one of the other programs that I'm really excited about, I'm learning a lot about this one. This is one that is kind of an idea we've heard about. Post 9/11, there's a lot of, you know, military has had this for a while. We've become aware of this, but 9/11 itself came with a lot of, called mental, trauma is probably the best word for it, but, you know, impacts, and some of it's small to big, right, across the range. And so if you can deal with those things at the point of incident, the production thereafter is much better. So one of the things in New York City that happened after 9/11 is there was an organization or a team inside New York City that was really built for that.
Right.
And so what happened is, because you have just a major community, and it amazes me how connected, regardless of how large it is. You know, I work more with FDNY than NYPD, but they have the same thing. There's a fraternity within that group. It's amazing when you ask Kevin, he knows every firefighter, their family, their lineage, you know, what illnesses they have from 9/11, it's phenomenal. I can barely remember the person I met outside the door. And this guy knows every lineage. It's amazing. And so what we've been talking about with our first responders here is building a community of first responders where post-incident, we're dealing with some stuff that we've just never seen before. We read about in the news, you guys deal with it. You guys see it, right? You guys see it. You have somebody pulling the lifeless body out of whatever scenario that sticks with you. Those things that stick
For everything you
forever.
hear about, there's 10 you don't.
Exactly. And we don't need to know that as a member of the public, but we need to understand it.
Right.
And so the more we as a community understand those things, but also provide a resource that says, hey, nobody wants to go home with those demons in their head. There's a place where you can go, and Heroes Defense facility here was set up as kind of the first phase of that. So post, after an incident, they come here, and the chaplain's been great, work with them to help get them work through those things and get them, ready to go back to work. But one of our big missions here is to there are organizations that have designed training programs for these and for these specifically for first responders. So one of our goals is to get that program set up, funded by Heroes Defense for the training and the facilities for that team to have a external/internal organization that can support first responders by first responders. So the simplicity of that is first responders that are trained to deal with, counseling through those sort of things. So you guys become self-sufficient and make your team stronger. The more you guys are mentally prepared, the better the community is with you guys out, right? So those are our two main initiatives. They're both a big chunk of money, which is why we got under $500,000 this year.
Yes,
So
and you guys can help, just come out and support,
That's
right?
it.
But those tickets are going fast, so you're gonna wanna get those. Let's build upon that, because there's no question that all of you guys carry some heavy burdens with the things that you see and the images that are probably hard to forget. Kind of talk us through how that impacts you and what you do to sort of get back on track.
I'm not the same person I was now, but I was when I started in this business, right? I mean, it changes you. What you have to watch out for is what did it change you for the better or for the worse, right?
Yes.
And when I got into this business, we were just starting to talk about the fact that it was okay to talk about stuff. That was early on in my career, and now we've made a lot of progress, a lot of leaps and strides, and we've gone from, hey, it's okay to talk about, to, hey, if we need to treat something, we will, and it's okay to have a debrief, it's okay to, it's okay to cry about stuff. I mean, those are the things that, before you go back 15, 20 years, 30 years, that just wasn't something that
So
was.
people just kept it all in.
It wasn't, I don't know, socially acceptable is the way to put it, but it wasn't part of the culture. It is, I think, part of the culture now, a lot more than it was. We work for an agency that is very concerned about mental health and concerned about the mental health of its people, and goes out of its way to support us and that kind of thing. But we got a lot of work to do. We're not there. Like I said, when I got into this business, just started talking about the fact that it's okay to talk about things. And now, that evolves into, hey, we're gonna debrief an incident, and everybody can talk about what, their thoughts were and how they felt and that kind of thing. And in today's world, it is so easy to isolate, right?
Yes.
Anybody can, I could probably go through an entire K-12 education program at this day and age and never have to really interact with anybody.
That's so true.
And so, but it doesn't change once you become, an adult. And so, getting past that isolation and the culture, I think it's swung the other direction. It's hard to.
I'm glad you brought, one thing is we've talked to these guys just from the outside looking in. The leadership we have in this community that's aware of that and understands the importance of that, I gotta give them props. It's been I think they've recognized that is, and business is the same way. Like, business, you got a top performer that's going through stuff, and you gotta help them through that and provide resources to support them and support them through that. And in this, we've seen leadership that is so focused around making sure that those resources are available, because they recognize that's how we keep and develop a force, right? Is keeping those guys healthy and keeping not just a force, but I mean a healthy community, right? And so, yeah, we've noticed that too. So I'm glad you brought that up. I was just gonna say, I want to give a shout out to the leadership we have in the city. You know, the community supports them, and they're doing, they're recognizing that the resources that are needed to support the forces.
And Sergeant, how do you go home and not really let all of that impact you at home? That's got to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies from person to person on how they deal with that when they go home and if they want to share that or if they want to just hold it in. I definitely started my career, I was a holder in kind of guy, keep it to yourself, and as you know, Lieutenant Graham talked about, it's one of those things that was you don't really talk about it, you just move on, go to the next call. But after having been through multiple incidences that, you know, weigh on my mind and that kind of thing, and he kind of touched on where we're getting to these, we're getting to that moment now where we can actually trust each other to talk about these incidents that have occurred, especially within your team, and debrief on those. It's amazing what that has done on some of the things that I've been through and my team's been through, what that does for your mental health, because you can just feel that burden, you can feel that weight kind of lift off compared to where you would just try to bury it as far as you could and hope that it would go away. And I think we still need to get better. We still have a lot of folks that like to bury that stuff and they think that it's going to go away, but it doesn't. And after 18 and a half years of doing this job, it doesn't go away. And some of those ones that we buried long ago, they come back up. And so it's vital that we talk about it. Now I trust my wife a lot more, and I talk to her a lot. And it's helped me immensely. And that's my goal, is to give that to the folks that not only that I supervise, but all of our incoming new guys that are coming in and that kind of thing, letting them know it's okay to go talk to somebody.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, it's important that you do that.
And it's a sign of strength. And, you know,
Absolutely.
as you were talking about just that, you know, keeping it in, these things can come back. It made me think of the title of this book, and I can't remember the author, but it's a fantastic book. Feelings buried alive never die. And that's so true. You never know when something that's buried inside can trigger and years later cause you a lot of emotional difficulty. Chief, what have you seen with regard to this concept of the mental health struggle?
It really comes down to a change of culture, and I think that's what you're seeing across, police and fire, is a change of culture, and things that Travis is talking about, being able to build a team and a resource there for our staff is critical, and so being able to shift that culture over time to where we don't have to just compartmentalize and bury it and deal with it on our own, but have a team of first responders that have been through it, that know basically what you're feeling, what you're going through, and being able to open that door, I think is going to be huge. And so every one of our agencies in the community actually has a trust team, has peer support basically built into our organizations. The sheriff and Chief Johnson and myself all have put budgetary dollars towards this. We do understand the effective and the professionalism, effectiveness, and just the proficiency of our officers and our staff really is critical. And that is just one component, not just physically healthy, but mentally healthy, in order to just continue to be at the top of their game every single day.
I love that you're pointing out that it really is that cultural shift. And I've got to believe that there's something really healing about talking to somebody who has walked that walk, who has been through the same kind of things, because they're going to have a different perspective and understanding than somebody who has never had to try and unsee those heartbreaking images that all of you deal with on such a regular basis. Travis, we talked at the beginning about the fact that this beautiful facility here, the Heroes Defense Offices, is also being used as a way to support our first responders. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing here.
Sure. So, and I gotta give a lot of props to the chaplains. The chaplains, that's really their mission, right? And so, we as a nonprofit, it wasn't in our plan to have an office for Heroes Defense, because we meet wherever. So, when we talked to the chaplains, they were looking for a space, because they're doing this sometimes in the field, sometimes they need a place where they can do it, quietly. And so, and they were needing a place to do that. So we worked some of the funding last year to help put the facility together. And I'll give the chaplains credit. They're one of the ones that went out to the units and said, hey, with Heroes Defense, we've got a place where you can come and do those degrees. And it's funny because some of it's not all tough stuff, right? It's not all difficult things. Sometimes it's just getting your team to work as a unit. And so sometimes I was telling them, I think, I came here one day in February, I think when we first opened the office, and Idaho Falls Fire was police, was having their Super Bowl party.
Oh, how nice. It's
Yeah.
beautiful over there.
Yeah, it's a great little lounge, and we, there's a big TV there and stuff, and so they brought in food, and they had a great, in business we call it team building, right?
Right.
And so that's really what it was, and so I just got to see a little piece of it, but to see them interact, because you guys are always, you're there, and you're there, and you're there, and you talk on the phone, but usually it's short as you're moving between shifts or whatever else, but to see them actually sit in a room together and build that camaraderie in a non-response fashion. I personally believe, and I think the leadership believed that that's how you build a team, right?
Sure.
And so the more of that you do, then when the hard stuff comes, it makes it a little easier. And so that was kind of where it started with, and then the chaplains do a whole, and I'm going to sound ignorant speaking to it because I don't know it all, but there's a therapeutic process they have in there with, lighting and heating and chairs and things like that do with, to actually calm, get the adrenaline out of the system.
Nice.
So, their concept is you don't want to work through somebody when they're still on an adrenaline high. So the goal is to get them out of that adrenaline high so that you can work through them logically through the emotions, right? The emotions are scattered during the adrenaline rush. So the chaplains are really good at that, but the chaplains are also limited resources. And also there's certain information that, needs to be shared between fire and police inside the unit for confidentiality reasons and so forth. So this was a place where it could be utilized for certain actions of that place, and they've been using that. We leave it open, they have a code to the building, so we don't know when they're in here. We'll come in, we're like, I think somebody was in here, snatch her off.
Must have been police.
I was waiting for you to get one down there.
Fire department's already got
We don't put donuts out. We don't put donuts out. So.
Oh, you do.
Or we
It's always
do.
gone.
Maybe they're always gone. But it is a place where they can come and do those sort of things. But and with the chaplain's assistance, they use that a lot too. But our goal with this program is to make it so Judd can talk to Zeb on a counseling basis and help him work through, hey, I'm dealing with this sort of thing, and this is how I'm thinking about it, and it's bothering me, and work through those sort of things. And I will say this, I saw this, I work with, I don't even know how many New York City firefighters we work with in that group, and it's funny because you can tell the ones that were on for 9/11 versus the younger generation. And not just by looking at them, because now they're hard to tell, like by the age, they're all in their 30s to 50s range. But I personally, and I think many of the firefighters from New York City would talk about, they would not have been able to maintain had they not had that internal counseling resource. And they built it support, they built it themselves. I mean, you're talking, there's many guys that were on a truck and they're the only survivors. Right. There were guys that lost their charge. There were guys that went down to get equipment and the team perished in the building, and there's a whole lot of stress and guilt there. So there's a lot of those things that survive, you know, almost the entire shift. So most of the 403 that died were the people that were on shift. Most of the people that came in were the people that had just gotten off shift. So, in fact, all the guys you'll talk to this week, everyone, their story is very similar. Is I had just gotten off shift, I was home, saw it, turned around, went back. And almost every person we talked to was a responder from 9/11. That's their same story. And so those guys had to really, you know, they had twice the work to do. Half the people, you know, and their leadership. Most guys that were down there were leadership. So you lost good significant part of your leadership, plus your entire team, and now you got twice the work and this mental burden. So, you know, those guys were really the first ones that build that out of necessity and just out of default. And one of the cool things of that is that they've been doing it for 20 years, so they've actually figured out a lot of the methods to do that internally. But yeah, it's an important point to see that, and we've learned more. It wasn't something we first came as Heroes of Defense and said, hey, that's something we need to provide, but you know, our mission is to provide whatever resource that is, and that is definitely something we found that's a resource that to get people on the force and be able to keep them on the force and keep them physically and mentally strong. That's the better they are there, the better our community is.
Right, and there is a correlation between that mental stress and physical health that sometimes gets a
100%.
little bit overlooked, so it's great what you're doing here. We are getting to the end of our time, so I want to start right here and then we'll finish up with you. But Chief, I wanted to give you an opportunity to just talk to us a little more about that memorial and what's happening there, and then just any final thoughts, and then we'll just come back around with any final thoughts that you guys want to share about what we can do to build our community and increase patriotism.
Yeah, so again, you know, big thanks to Heroes Defense, Paul Davis, Qualtech, and just there's never the perfect time to build a memorial, you know, 23 years, but there's always a good time to build it. And this is a really good time to build it, to rebuild that camaraderie in the community, really get that service-oriented feel back in, and present and provide a place basically for people to be able to go, remember that day, but also remember other things that are going on in their life, really focusing on service and patriotism that'll bring. 10 o'clock on 9/11, we'll do a unveiling and memorial and dedication of that through a ceremony that won't last too long, but you know, we invite anybody and everybody that can be there. We'd love to have a very large event that day.
You guys are blocking off the road in front, right? Or no? So that's these guys are something.
We'll see if we get so many people that it just blocks the road.
We'll just clog it ourselves.
Well, that's going to be something that will no doubt be really memorable, not just on September 11th, but throughout the years of Healing Space.
You won't miss it when you drive by. So if you can't make the memorial, please take the opportunity to drive by.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And Lieutenant Graham.
I just want to say that you know, the sheriff's office is here for this community. We are all deeply invested, just like our fire partners, EMS, and our police department partners. But we care a lot, and you know, the next time you see one of us, one of the deputies or one of the officers, it doesn't have to be during a traffic stop. You know, just say hi and you know, let them know that they're appreciated. But we, like I said, we're all invested in this community very deeply, and we will be there when you need us.
Thank you so much. And Sergeants.
So, you know, Chief Nelson and Travis, they touched on some things that I just thought were just vital about how we're on this discussion and how do we make it better? How do we, you know, bring back the cool factor? And I can tell you with Chief Nelson and his guys, I mean, I've had such a great relationship with IFire and also other local organizations. I mean, we have lunch together, we go out and train together, and if I ever ask Chief Nelson for anything, I mean, those guys or his guys, they're on top of it. And my example would be is like we had lunch the other day with some of his guys up in Swan Valley, and you know, this little boy just thought that was the coolest thing in the world, and we handed him out, you know, gave him stickers and that kind of thing. I'm sure he thought the fire stick, The fire stickers were cooler, but no, I think it's so important that we keep these relationships as good as they are right now and build off of that. And I think people will see the cool factor and we'll get those folks with the character that we need to jump in and be the hero. So.
That momentum, that's
Yep.
gonna be so important.
And Travis,
You know, this has been a great discussion, guys, by the way. It was funny when we talked about this, like, what direction we want to go? It's like, honestly, I just want to see where it goes. You know, I mean, let's just sit down and lay it out, and I think we covered some really, really important stuff. And first of all, thank you guys. I know you guys are busy. I know you guys got a lot going on. But, you know, I want to personally thank you for taking the time coming in here. And not only that, but also allowing Heroes Defense to do what we do. So, you know, we couldn't do without you guys telling us what you need, or we wouldn't be useful. So, just a couple of things I want to touch on. I'm going to do a little plug, if I may. You know, one of my personal things is, you know, it's hard to maintain that constant awareness. You know, it's one of those things as a community, right? It's hard to make sure that we keep that. You know, if you talk like we talked about before, I think before the meeting. You know, we talked to the guys in New York City. 9/12 was this pinnacle moment where the world came together.
Sure.
And they felt like the support was it was visible, right? It was felt in every moment of every day. So I'm like, how do we get back to that?
yeah,
Right. And so a couple little things we like to do, and it's kind of a two-way relationship. And so, you know, for you guys, you know, we have the Heroes Defense Badge. And one of our missions is to get people in the community, you know, we sell merch. We don't make a ton of money on the merch, but my ambition is if you guys see somebody with a Heroes Defense Badge on your back, know that they're a supporter of what you do when it's visible. Right? And that makes it a visible emblem for you. If you're walking in a sandwich shop and you see a guy wearing the shirt, hopefully he's giving you a high five in the same way back. And then, you know, that's where we keep that constant awareness. And then the members of the community see that too, right? And they go, what's that about? And it starts to become that trend. So that's something that we talk about, is like, how do we build that constant awareness? And that's why we did the merch, to try to get, you know, that is in the face of the community that connects that with when you guys, God knows where you just came from, right? Or what you just got done doing. But you walk in to grab lunch and you see the people in there wearing that, or you see it in the car, or you see it on the sign walking by. That's a big mission of ours, is to try to build that constant awareness in the community. So that's one of the things. But you know, we talk about 9/12 and why we started this, and I'll just end with this: is, you know, New York City had an amazing community supporting first responders after 9/11 for, I would say, probably 5 or 7 years, and then slowly that perspective started to change and become diluted. Right, and when I saw that with 9/11, I was seeing the people in New York City Fire and FDNY and PD, seeing that unity fade. And so, you know, I said, you know, we're gonna try to do something opposite, and that's when we started. And I got to give our community credit, because I think it would surprise a lot of people, even in New York City, to see us start something when everything else was doing this, to see our community stand back up and go, no, we're not going to forget that. Absolutely. And this community stands behind you guys because of who you are. You guys do a great job of connecting the community. Our objective is to keep it that way. So, appreciate what you guys do. Appreciate you coming today. I think we're going to have another follow-up with the FDNY guys next week.
Yes, we're gonna be doing that KID crew on the 10th.
Yeah.
Out at the waterfront at Snake River Landing, and it's gonna be a great discussion. Travis, no doubt we're gonna hear some really powerful stories.
Yep.
Absolutely.
They're a great bunch of guys. So, they're New Yorkers, so.
They shoot straight, for
They
sure,
shoot
right?
straight. They shoot straight. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, they're a great bunch of guys. I know 2 of the 3 that'll be there. They're good friends of mine. The other one I have actually not yet met, but they're all great guys.
And I'm sure he'll be a friend by the time he leaves, right?
He will be by the time he leaves, I guarantee.
No question about that. Well, KID crew, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Table Talk is born out of this idea, this belief that when you gather around a table, break bread together, and engage in really important conversation, some magic really does happen. And I think this has been a really important conversation. we were able to touch on a lot of great things. So I want to thank you each for taking time, for sharing your perspective and your stories and experience. And a big thank you to Gandolfo's for providing us with a delicious lunch. Lieutenant Webb found the cookies for us. They were kind of buried at the bottom of the box. We're like,
He was an investigator, right?
yeah, he put those investigative
That's right.
skills to use. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Classic Interiors. So go out and pay them a visit because they have gorgeous dining room tables and chairs that will be perfect for you to host your own table talks and to engage in those magical conversations that happen when we come together and gather around a table. And that furniture is built to last a lifetime.